is my honor to present Valentina Kuryliw from Canada to be our next speaker. Valentina.
Thank you very much. I am thrilled to be here. When I heard about this forum, I said, wow, it is time. It is definitely something that they can do, and I would be very happy to come if they invite me, share some of my experiences. I've been at this for 12 years. Most of it, as I said, was as a volunteer. As a retired teacher, geez, we teachers are good. We don't leave the classroom, really. We're still teaching. And that is something very important. Next slide, please. I've already talked about my positions. Can you forward that for me? Sure. Please, Oksana. Yeah, please. I don't like doing these things, technology. I've already mentioned that. The only thing I didn't mention that I'm on the board of directors of the Ukrainian Canadian Research and Documentation Center, which this is an organization that produced the first film on the Holodomor, Harvest of Despair, and it also has an oral history collection, which we have of survivors, and we have children of survivors as well. And we do have a website, you can look it up. The other thing I wanted to mention before I get started is I have handouts. Irka, could you hand out those folders, these pamphlets that I gave you? These? Yeah.
They were handed out.
Oh, they're handed. Okay, so you have a flyer, a pamphlet, and I have other handouts that are over there. That's, I might not have enough for everybody, but I would like the teachers to get a hold of them afterwards, would be good. Over there, and I also brought the books. The books and the DVDs, please leave where they are, because they're not available for you to take, unfortunately. So, the topic, they asked me, first of all, to say something a little bit about myself. So I prepared a few slides. So the topic of the Holodomor has played a significant role in my life, and has influenced me as a horrendous tragedy that I knew about, even as a small child, and as a refugee kid in the DP camps of Europe. The feeling of the injustice of it has never left me. And no matter what I did in my life, I found that regardless of what I was teaching, what I was doing, I always got back to the Holodomor. And so towards the end of my teaching career, I decided I had to do something about it. I always taught it in my own classrooms, whether it was stated or not. I did not care, because I had a thing to do. I'm a history specialist, and I was a department head of history for over 35 years, so I knew what I was doing. These are my parents, and these are the people that influenced me the most. Both of them are Holodomor survivors. My mother was 11 years old. Her name is Nadia Minko. If you show the next slide, this is in her younger years. She's not 11 here. They didn't have cameras, so whatever pictures I have, they come from different times. And she lived in Chernihivska Oblast, Chernihiv, the city of Ichnya. Her mother worked on a kolbos. Her father worked as a carpenter at a distillery that made alcohol, for which in 1933 there were hordes of wheat while people starved. So she had an interesting story. My father, Ivan, he was a little older. He was 22 years old at the time. And he was the son of a kulak, kurkul. His father was arrested in 1928, and he was an activist. He put out posters against collectivization. They burnt down the communist activist house. So he ended up in prison and he died in 1937. My father was arrested as the eldest son, and he ended up in the Gulag. If you read Anne Applebaum's Gulag, the Belomor Canal, near the Finnish border. My father spent 2 years there, and they released him just in time for the Holodomor. Next. This is where I was born. I'm the one with the little thing around. This is my Sadochuk in Germany. We lived in barracks. Next. And you can see the bullet holes in the back. Again, I'm there, the third one from the left. Next. We came to Canada as immigrants once they stopped the repatriation, because my parents were up for repatriation. My father, by the way, I didn't mention, came from Kyiv, just outside of the city of Kyiv, in Holodomor, a big town, where they had land. I grew up in the Ukrainian Pravoslavna Tsarkva, Sveta Pokrova, St. Mary the Protectress, and this is where I was also influenced. This was a special parish that was formed after World War II. The people who came from these camps and had lived through Soviet torture and everything else in the Holodomor couldn't find common dialogue with a lot of others that were already in Canada. So they set up their own church. Every single one of them had lived through the Holodomor. So as a kid, I mean, it was up by osmosis that I absorbed a lot of the stuff. And my father and my adopted grandfather used to talk about the old days. They told me to get lost. You know, you're 8 years old, you're 9 years old. I used to sit in the corner or underneath the kitchen table, and I would listen. And I thought, what a terrible thing these stories were. So that was another reason why I wanted to know. And of course, I ended up going to McGill University after I finished high school. I was always active in the Students' Club, going out and organizing demonstrations against the Soviets. It was really exciting. And when I finished university, I ended up as a teacher, went to Teachers College and became a history specialist. And here you can see one of my classes that I was teaching. And during all that time, I just wanted to explain to you a little of what was going on. This is part of the work that I did even as a volunteer. We organized the National Holodomor Education Committee with the UCC. Then I realized that I'm doing this in Ontario, where we have certain things. I'm working with the review committee on curriculum. But what's happening in the rest of Canada? I found out about Val Noseworthy, who's sitting over there. She was working for the Ministry of Education, and she was doing things in Manitoba. So we set up local committees in each of the provinces where we could do that. Just as you're doing now. You're going to have representatives in each of your states. And so we worked together to coordinate. We set up something called Holodomor Memorial Day in schools. We know that you commemorate the Holodomor on Saturday, on the fourth Saturday. We do it on the fourth Friday in the schools, where the schools are encouraged to read an announcement. And the flyer that you got is what we produce each year. We send it out electronically. I send them to hard copies to Vanya as well, to distribute as well. And this we have been doing. I'm not saying all school boards have bought into it, but we have enough of them doing it already, and we look forward to them. And if you look at them, you'll find all kinds of information on the Holodomor that is very useful. We also, of course, included the topic of the Holodomor in curriculum. It took me from 2008 until 2013 for it to be in the curriculum. And even the one little word, Holodomor, in brackets, when there's a topic, is very significant. Because when they write textbooks, they only deal with what is in these little brackets. And I needed to get it in. But the only way I could do that was because I knew how they did it. I was familiar with the education system, with the history curriculum, and this had to be done. So that was important. And we prepared teaching resources. Whatever I did a lot of workshops right from the start. I would bring papers. My husband says, you're like a bag lady, except you have a suitcase. You know, everywhere I did, I tried to find things. I took the materials and I had to write things. It took me 10 years to write this book. 308 pages. But it's done. Because when a teacher goes to a conference, if there aren't any handouts, there won't be any teaching, I guarantee it. I went to them myself. I saw what was going on. So this was very, very important to make sure that we have this. Next. And of course, I already talked about HREC. So we can. And these are the things that HREC as the Director of Education, this is what I do. I'm not going to go through each one of them. There's a handout. I have my mandate. And if you're interested in having a mandate, you can take a look. I share my stuff. I did it with Oksana. I did it with Lana. I said, by all means, that's what it's all about. Next. And some of the things we did, a lot of it I've already mentioned. Classroom visits, preparation of teaching materials, workshops. I do workshops all the time. I just came back from Edmonton last week. I did a workshop at the Faculty of Education at the University of Alberta for teachers and for student teachers. And again, students, a writing contest. We've done that. I can't do it every year. It's too much work. But for every couple of years, we have a student. And one of the winners last time was a girl in a hijab. She was a Muslim who won one of the prizes. And there were 2 Ukrainians, of course. And we also have the, as I mentioned, the Educator Prize. And conferences. I've had 2 conferences, which I'll talk about later. And the mobile classroom. I was there in the initial. I wrote the curriculum applications for it, for the grants. And I prepared the lesson. That took me 9 months to get the content, the methodology, and to work with the technical department. Because we had to make sure that it was different than what was in the classroom. And we did. And it's received all kinds of awards for that. And of course, the publication of my book. Next. So this is the flyer that you have before you, so we can go quickly through this. And the second page, as you can see, there's all kinds of materials on it. Next. This is the application for the Educator Award. Just being announced, and it's due on, they can do the submissions for May the 1st. And as I mentioned, we raised the prize to $2,000. So figure teachers are worth it. It goes onto our website, and they become Holodomor educators. We love it. We're going to get a group of them with time. Next. Go back. One more, go back. And these are some of the, this is in Fresno, California, down below, where I worked at the Faculty of Education. And one person that was at my presentation is here today. And a class for a PD day with the Toronto District School Board. Next. And here I am with a member of the, is this the Minister of Education?
No, she's
She was the representative on that, in Manitoba.
Yeah.
That's right. And I was teaching a lesson to teachers. And this is what, they wanted a picture with me on this, so that we took a picture. This is the inside of the bus with the screens. Next. And this is Ukraine. I also work in Ukraine. And it's very important that the Ukrainians also teach about the Holodomor. They have an optional course on the Holocaust. But there's no course on the Holodomor. And I said that was terrible. So I'm a consultant to this course that's being done. But we also signed a memorandum of agreement in 2016 when I visited Lidia Hrinovich, who was the Minister of Education. And she read my first book. I wrote a book before this in Ukrainian for Ukraine called The Methodology on Teaching History, How to Teach History to Reform It, for critical thinking skills and interactive methods. She liked it, so she invited herself to our symposium, and we signed a memorandum so that we have a methodology lab where we can, I'm involved with that, to help to teach Ukrainian teachers how to teach the Holodomor and human rights. Next. Our conference. We had 127 people coming from across Canada, and we had 2 from the United States. We invite everybody. And it was held in Winnipeg. Go back. And basically, most of the attendees were not Ukrainian. And 60% were non-Ukrainians, and I was thrilled. And that was important, but we had professors there as well. Not all of them Ukrainian as well. Next. And that's my book, with a little bit of inside. The book is available for sale. You'd have to tell me that you want one. We will send it to you if you're interested. I have 2 copies here. I already promised one gentleman that that was going to be his. I have another one that I could sell. But other than that, they're heavy. But it's, when I wrote it, it's everything that I think a teacher would need to teach the Holodomor. That's the way I see it. I've worked on it for a long time. Okay, next. So this is our website. I mentioned it before, education.holodomor.ca, very simple. This is my favorite quotation about genocide, because I deal with genocide not only about the Holodomor. Genocide begins with the killing of one man, not for what he has done, but because of who he is. Identity, dehumanization, etc., leads to genocide, right? And starts with bullying. So this is a very good way of teaching it. Next. And of course, my approach is using human rights. Human rights, democratic values, you actually come out with responsible citizenship. Very important. And I do not agree that it's only in social studies courses. I started out doing that. I spoke to Professor Apsel, Joyce Apsel from the New York City University, which said to me, Valentina, that's wrong. You should be teaching human rights. Do it from human rights completely, not just for history courses, because kids don't all take history courses today. It's optional. You have to teach from others. And next, multidisciplinary approach. So that's what I've been doing, and I've been very successful at doing this. Look at all the courses I can do it in. And every good teacher knows how to pick out and see where it belongs. So that we don't want to only be teaching in the history classroom. You could do it in literature, you could do it in other disciplines, even religious studies, morality, ethics, right? All kinds of possibilities, geography, etc. Next. So content, teaching materials, primary sources of information is what I'm good at. I can find them, I make sure and I teach kids how to use them and how to analyze them. Variety of different resources too, pictures, literature, excerpts from literature, all kinds of things, and documents and letters. And basic information about the Holodomor. A methodology is king. Make it interesting. This is not university where they paid money to come and get an education, where they have to sit there and listen no matter what. Kids will walk and they will turn off. You have to engage them and make it interesting. So that has to be done. Next. There you go. Activating students in the classroom. Next. And this is something I'm not going to discuss right now. But I wanted to mention a couple of things. So the most important thing, as I see, is recognition. In Canada, it's very difficult for me to walk into an office of a Minister of Education if it is not recognized. In Canada, it's been recognized as a genocide nationally in 2008 and in 5 provinces. The biggest ones. We still have 5 more to go. The other thing is that to approach governments, you need, for this committee, both activists and professional educators. They can see someone who doesn't know what they're talking about. I can see them, so why wouldn't they? You know what I mean? It's very easy to do. And in this case, I've been fortunate that I wear 2 hats. With the UCC, I can go in with my political hat and say that I have 1,300,000 Ukrainians behind me in Canada. And of course, as the Director of Education, I'm an educator, professional educator as well. So I'm just suggesting that you get both, because you need both the types of people. Use the buzzwords that are around today: inclusivity, diversity, and equity. And these are the things that we can always, as you mentioned, Doris, this is very important. And you have to start by doing human rights and their abuse and social justice. That is key. And more, from what I heard today and in Canada, people are teaching genocide courses. So you've got to get yourself in there. Ask for the inclusion of the Holodomor as a case study of genocides. They could do comparative genocides. What we have done that was similar to what Oksana was doing, I worked with a young teacher who we went through all the social study curriculum and history curriculum in Ontario. That was a big job. I read everything. With the marker, we chose the areas where we could apply the Holodomor. And then we wrote it up and it's on our website. So there are, out of 27 courses, I found that we could teach it in 13. Probably half of them have the Holodomor included, but I also suggested for other courses. And teachers who have to teach it don't have to look for this, it's already done for them. So this is something that you can think about for your state as well, as you mentioned, that it was extremely, extremely important. And the other thing I wanted to mention was get non-Ukrainians involved as well. It really makes a difference when someone like Michael Anthony walks in and says, I want you to have the Holodomor in the curriculum. You know, not just Ukrainians, now we have everybody doing it. So that's very important. It's a motherhood issue, and I think that's important. And approach different organizations and be members of these professional organizations as teachers and speak out, such as Facing History and Ourselves. They're a hard nut to crack, in Canada as well. But we still crack, you know, we still don't accept the word no, right? That's important. And we need excellent teaching materials. And that is key. That is the most important thing, with content that is verifiable and accurate. You know, it's very easy to say whatever you want and to use numbers whatever you want, but are they verifiable? And the first thing that's going to be thrown out with the bathwater is your course, if you are not doing, you know, what has to be done. And I'm very keen on that. For example, photographs. For many years, the people were using 1921 photographs. I did an interview for an organization called FAST in Canada as a child of survivors. And they asked me, can you give me a couple of pictures? So I gave them some. And then he said, don't worry about the rest. The videographer knows what to do. So I said, but you're not going to use it until I see it. So I saw it, and I was upset. They had starving children, who knows from where. They, you know, oh, it's a poetic license, like poetic license, you know. We can do it, we do it for all others, why shouldn't we do it for the Holodomor? I said, you cannot do this for the Holodomor. I said, we are going to get bombarded with all kinds of things. I said, then I went through them, and I gave them the verifiable, you know, pictures that needed to be in there, if they were very sensitive. Very, very important that we do not mess things up by being, you know, by being slack on this kind of thing. Yeah. So that basically, ladies and gentlemen, as much time as I have, I'm interested in hearing your questions. I don't think I've explained everything, but it gives you an idea of what we've been able to accomplish in these 12 years in Canada. It is far from over. But we're going to continue. As we say, you know, you scratch a little bit at a time, and it will happen. And I wish you all the luck in the world. And I like the idea that we're going to coordinate our efforts. I've talked to Paul Grod about that too, that we have to coordinate. And we can do it. By the way, my book is already being translated into Ukrainian and French. I've had requests from Brazil, that means Portuguese, maybe a few things that they want, and even in Spanish, when people from Chile, non-Ukrainians, said they wanted some materials. So that's great. So, you know, it's working. Thank you very much.